The story begins with a post-apocalyptic world where everything has been destroyed. Then the emergency alarm rings, after which everyone starts running and hiding. Then we are shown those monsters from whom everyone is scared. Monster races have crossed the dimensional gate and entered the human world. In the midst of all this chaos, we are shown the protagonist of the story, who is watching everything from a tall building. And when a monster is about to kill a child, he saves the child's life by killing the building-sized monster in one punch. And now all the other monsters come there after hearing the sound. He was just taking the child to a safe location when suddenly a monster attacks him, and all the other monsters also come there, whom he easily defeats. Then comes a monster who was the biggest of them all, and this time the protagonist had to face some difficulties, but he defeated him too in the end. Then there comes the monster boss, who is very different and powerful from the rest of the monsters. And they approach to fight on seeing each other. And at the same time we come to know that all these monsters are after our protagonist, and he is the reason behind all this. We're shown a scene from 8 months back when our protagonist Horniro was 19 years old, and he didn't know about his powers yet. He was an outcast and some students used to bully him very badly because he was a transfer student. Noro was very weak and he takes some pills daily. Then those bullies drop his pills and start beating him. The bullies were making fun of him being an orphan, which makes Horniro very angry. But then Lee Luna comes there, who is Hanara's classmate, and she is also very pretty. The bullies didn't want to look bad in front of Lee Luna. Seeing her, they leave from there. Nero leaves from there without saying anything. Troubled by all these bullies, he stands on the roof of the school and is thinking about his past and his grandmother when Young comes there and is scared to see him standing and tries to get him down from there. Young is the only one who talks to Nero when they are alone, otherwise they would bully him too. Horniro comes back to his class, where some students are looking at an image in which they had mistakenly captured a photo of a demon while taking photos on their trip, but no one believes it. At night the same demon comes out and we learn that he is looking for a key. Naro hides his injury from his grandmother, but she comes to know that Naro is being bullied in the school. That monster kills a delivery guy, wears his skin and takes his form, and comes to Naro's apartment. Naro was taking a bath at that time. The monster attacks grandmother on seeing her and grandmother dodges her, and we come to know that she is a powerful mage, and without her Nero knowing, she kills that monster and she also heals her wounds. The next day, while running, Hanaro collapses and sees a dream in which a man escapes from someone and enters a portal. Naro wakes up and finds himself in the nurse's room. Every time Hanaro faints, he sees the same dream. He calls his grandmother, who asks him to pack her stuff, but he comes to know that his grandmother is running away from someone. And this is not the first time that Gennaro has to change schools. Hanaro was very weak because of this. Hanaro used to be bullied a lot. At night we see that this time many monsters come out and come back again in the form of delivery guy. The dogs start barking at them, due to which the grandmother comes to know in advance and she quickly sends her Nero to school. He gets surprised to see so many delivery guys while going out. He gets suspicious, but he ignores and moves on. Nero is about to leave when he sees a delivery guy falling from above. He panics, thinking about his grandmother, and runs upstairs. But as the lift is not working, he goes through the stairs. And on the other hand, his grandmother is single-handedly fighting so many monsters, yet she was overpowering them. Only then do we see a special type of monster who calls her a Sana, and they knew each other. He tells Sana that it's useless to hold on. Soon the king's troops will come. They start fighting and he asks her to give him the key. Sana asks him about the king. Then Naro comes at the door and Sana lets her guard down, and taking advantage of that, the monster attacks Sana. And now that monster also comes to know that Gennaro is the key, due to which Sana gets very angry and kills him. But a monster had taken Hanaro hostage. It threatens to kill him. Due to this, Sana gets angry, but that monster cuts one of her hands off. After that, Naro tries to bite that monster. Then that monster slams him against the wall. Sinai tries to help Gennaro, but the monster kills Sinai when he gets the chance. Porniro tries to attack, but the monster kills him first. But Senna was not dead yet. She becomes furious and killed that monster. Naro gets the same dream again, but this time it was very detailed. We are shown a battlefield where a war is going on between monsters and humans, in which monsters win. We again see the same human running away. This is Senna, who is running away from the battlefield with Naro. A woman asks Anna to take care of Naro, and Senna jumps into the portal with Naro. Naro hears someone's voice in his dream that says, "Don't die, Naro." Naro remembers that he has heard this voice somewhere. After that, Naro starts thinking about an incident in his past where he was beating a kid because he was telling him you don't have a mom. That kid's mother comes there and scolds Naro and goes away, and Naro starts crying there. Senna starts crying, seeing Naro in this situation. So now was the head guard, and she locked Naro's powers to save Naro. Now, seeing Naro in the face of death, Senna decides to return Naro's powers back to him. All the vitality she had left, she puts it into Naro's body. And with that, Naro's powers start getting back. But sadly, this was the end of Senna's life. She says her last goodbye to Nero. And by the time Meryl wakes up, Senna was already gone. It's been 1 month since then. We are shown a police station. Naro has been continuously searching for Senna for the past month. And the officer there also gets annoyed by his repeated visits to the police station. No one believes the words of Naro. Naro makes a sketch of that monster and shows it to the officer. The officer thinks that Naro is playing a prank on him, and the officer gets angry. Naro comes back disappointed from there. Naro inquires around, but no one knows anything about it, and there is no record on CCTV also. Now he also thinks maybe it was not real, but one thing is for sure, his grandmother disappeared. The next day he goes to school for the first time in a month. The principal assures him that he would try to stop any kind of rumors from spreading. Young was standing outside the principal office. Only then does Naro feel that someone is watching him. And the rest of the students in the school field are talking about how Nora's whole vibe has changed. He looks stronger and different than before. Naro again feels like someone is watching him. Later, he again feels the same presence behind him. This time, he tries to find out secretly. Turns out it was Lee Luna. She asks him why he doesn't take his medication anymore. Even Nero himself hadn't realized until now. He hears something and runs away without saying anything. He ran because he heard those bullies coming. Lee Luna was happy for him. Coming home, Naro sees Luna working at a convenience store which was near his house. He thinks of saying hello to her, but after realizing what had happened earlier, he decides to ignore her. But he stops to help an old lady in need. At the same time, 2 of his bullies also arrive there for cigarettes. Luna asks for their ID and declines to sell cigarettes to a minor. He threatens her and leaves the store. They try to get that old lady to buy cigarettes for them, and when she doesn't agree, they start messing up her possessions. When Nero sees them, he asks them to stop bothering her. They mock him for his bravado. When Nero sees what they had done to that old lady's belongings, he becomes furious. They take him to an isolated place to beat him while one of them was keeping watch. As they start beating him, he gets angrier and finally reaching his limit, he snaps and breaks his leg. His eyes start glowing and he runs away from there. Nero himself was in shock after what happened. Then he realizes these things started happening to his body since the day when the monsters attacked his house. The next day at school, everyone was talking about the incident that got one of the bullies hospitalized. The other bully who was with him that day comes to Naro and starts shouting at him that how because of him his friend is now in the hospital. Naro apologizes for that, but he gets even more furious. Young tries to calm him down, but that bully threatens to kill him and Naro again snaps. Seeing him in that state again, he realizes last night wasn't a trick. He gets scared by him and walks away. During a night he goes to a rooftop of a factory and tries to find out if he is really strong. He tries to lift a heavy metal object, but he wasn't able to lift it. As he was about to give up, he notices that he was able to bend the iron metal. So he tries to lift it again, and this time he was able to lift it. The next day, the bully comes to school with his broken leg. He was scared of Naro and tries to not cause any scene. During lunchtime, Sanso and the bully offers Luna to eat lunch with him, but she ignores him and goes to eat with Naro and even shares her lunch with him. Everyone starts wondering if they are dating. Sunsen becomes furious and starts his own friend for getting beaten up by a loser. During their argument, Luna comes there and challenges Sansoen. If he is not scared, then prove it by defeating Nero in a one-on-one fight. At first he ignores it, but when Luna pushes him a little further, he agrees to the challenge. Everyone was excited about the match. Everyone was there not expecting Nero to really show up, but when he shows up, everyone starts saying that he has gone insane. Sunsen was confident that he would win, so he lets Naro get the first hit. He hadn't even finished his sentence yet, and Naro pinches him, knocking him unconscious and says, "Get up." It hasn't even started. Everyone stood there, shocked, scared, and confused about what just happened, while Naro was brutally beating him. The bully begs him to stop, to which he replies that he wouldn't kill him. Cold breath comes out of his mouth and the bully collapses. Luna was watching all this from the rooftop, saying, as expected, it was him, indicating she already knew that he was special. At Noro's apartment, a monster was trying to get inside. When Noro was coming from school, his friend stops him on the way and give him the bag that he had forgotten at school. He says to Noro that he had changed a lot. While coming back to his apartment, Noro keeps thinking about what his friend said about him being different now. The monster was still inside the room, searching for something when it hears Noro coming back. Noro turns on the light, but the monster was nowhere to be seen. It was hiding right above him. Noro notices the plant in his house and starts watering it. As the monster attacks him from behind, he throws the pot at it. He could sense it all the way from the elevator. The monster asks him who was he and attacks him. Keep in mind that these monsters still have no idea that he was the key. The monster attacks him, destroying his whole apartment in the process. Noro dodges its attack without much effort. He grabs its arm and breaks it. The monster screams in pain and says to him that he was not a human. Noro's eyes start glowing again. The monster sacrificed its arm to run away from there and jumps through the window. The monster was confused because he gave a human smell, so how could he be so strong? Noro also jumps from his apartment and kicks him in the face, and he falls into the bushes. When Noro comes down, he was already gone, but he could still track it by its pungent smell. The monster was terrified and was wondering about his identity. It knows no matter what he couldn't defeat him in a fight. His only option was to run away from him as soon as possible and make his identity known to the other demons and the Demon King. As it was thinking all this, Noro catches up to him, causing it to fall back. The monster used his blades to stab onto the table and attacks Noro. Noro breaks the table, but it wasn't to hurt him, it was to distract him. Meanwhile, the monster ran as fast as it could from there. Noro was surprised to see how quickly it ran from there. Noro uses the tent as a weapon and throws it as hard as he could at the monster. The monster looks behind to see what was coming, but gets stabbed by the umbrella and was not able to move now. The monster asks him again in pain who he was, but Noro says to him that he'd be the one asking questions this time. He asks the monster why it came there while piercing the tent deeper inside it. It says that it was Hisona. They're combatants that came to look for Sona a month ago, when they didn't make it back to the demon world. This monster came here to find out what happened to them. Noro asks it why it was after his grandma. The monster was shocked to hear him call Sona his grandma, and asks again who he was. Noro gets angry at it for keeps asking the same question over and over again when he clearly told it that he'd be the one asking the questions. He starts piercing it more and asks it again why it was after Sona. It told him that she ran away with the key, and Coom wants them to find it, so he keeps sending them over. Noro asks it where the other monsters are. It told him that they were on the other side of the portal, in the demon world. Then it says if he wasn't a demon himself. Noro gets angry and says that he wasn't a monster like it. The monster laughs at him and says, "Are you sure you are a human?" Noro now realizes the flames that were coming out of his hands. He sees himself in a mirror and wonders if he really was a monster. Seeing him distracted, the monster was able to escape there. The monster escapes through a manhole. Noro was running in the rain, searching for it. He trips and falls to the ground. A woman asks him if he was okay. The kid with her gets scared to see his face glowing like that. Noro runs away from there. Beyond the portal, in the demon world, that monster comes out of the portal all injured. We see the hall of the Demon King, Coom. The monster was trembling with fear. The priest orders him to speak about his discovery. It tells him about Sona being dead and the young man he fought. They were curious about this young man. The monster told them that he had the features of that traitor, and he seems to be unaware of his identity. The priest asks him why didn't he bring him there, to which he replies that he was too strong for him to handle alone. The priest gets angry at the monster for running away and not him with it. It says that his breath was so cold that even the slightest touch of air he exhaled made his entire body freeze. The demon by the Demon King's side was interested now. This demon was the demon general, Chen. He asks the monster if he was sure about him breathing cold air. The monster replies it was like cold fire. Chen removes his head from his body and kills it. The priest starts yelling that there was no way he has the power of cold fire, although it was something that the eldest son had, but there's no way it would remain. General agrees with him but warns him not to raise his voice like that ever again, or he would kill him. After hearing all this, they conclude that the king's descendant was alive. Since the dawn of time, humans and monsters have constantly been at war. The gap between the passages of the world has expanded, and countless victims have been smeared with blood. All of a sudden, all the passages leading to the human world close after the war. Time passed. To humans, monsters had become a legend of myth, but the boundaries have started to crack. All of those entrances that have been sealed before are now filled with holes. In the human world, Noro comes running to the police station. They had found some footage during their survey, and she fits the description of his grandmother. Noro's eyes get teary when he recognizes it's his grandmother. The police tell him that the place is famous for its medicine. Noro realizes the medicines his grandmother used to give him. She must have been buying them from that market. He asks them for the address and runs to that market. They told him that it had been 2 months since this footage was taken. He wouldn't find anything there now, but he goes there anyway. He arrives at the market and the market was huge. He was looking for the pharmacy that had sold that medicine. He tries to track that pharmacy by the smell of that medicine which he had been taking for years. It was faint, but he was able to track it down. He asks the man there for the medicine. The man was not looking like your regular person. The man asks, "Medicine for who?" To which he replies, "Sona." The man stops working and told him to wait there. Noro realizes something and goes inside. He sees him running away. Noro chases him, but the man was fast for his age. Noro uses the wall as a support and gets in front of him and asks him to stop. As the man was going to attack him, he yells that Sona was his grandmother. The man stops after hearing this. Noro shows him the medicine. The old man told him that this was a suppressant. There are some side effects, but it prevents the demonic powers from showing. Demons whose strength has diminished need this kind of medicine to live and hide in this world. The old man was one of them. Sona had told him to give it to Noro if he comes there. Noro asks if it stops you from becoming a monster. The man tells him that they were not monsters, they were demons. The man wonders why Sane took this kid and crossed the gap. Just who is this kid? Noro asks him to tell him everything he knows about her grandma. His mother, Sona, was the greatest warrior in the Demon Kingdom. As the general of the royal guard, she served the empress closely. One day the king's younger brother, Kum, had raised an army and breached the palace. It was the war between demons. Many who tried to protect the king had merely become ashes and perished. And in the end, the king and the queen fell. Kum sacrificed thousands of his brother's followers as he took the throne, and the only few who had survived came to this human world. Noro was surprised to hear that there are more demons like the old man. They always live in hiding. Kum kept dispatching combatants to kill them, the last followers of the king. And now Noro was the one they were after. And that's the reason the old man ran as soon as he saw Noro, thinking he was one of those monsters. The old man told him that they were trying to take something that Sona was holding. Even if she was being chased, she would still keep coming there for medicine. But she didn't come this time. The old man asks Noro if something happened to her. Noro couldn't stop his tears and started crying. The old man assumes what must have happened. The old man told him that those guys would not give up and that they would come after him soon. In the next scene, Noro was standing on top of a building and thinks about his past. He doesn't care if he was a human or a demon. The only thing that mattered to him was that they had killed his grandmother. And now he was not gonna cower as he did in the past anymore. Now all he cared to take revenge on those demons who killed his grandma. In the demon world, the dimensional gap used to link the human world, we see the Demon King Kum and General Chen who were flying near the portal. They have sent hundreds of combatants to kill Sona and retrieve the key, but none of them succeeded. They lost their life instead by Sena's hand. That's why this portal is called Entrance of Death. The Demon King says that once the portal opens, he would wipe out and conquer the human world without any injury. General agrees with him and says that Sona definitely left the key to open this portal to the late son's kid. He was talking about Noro. He was the key to opening this portal and the son of the late king. The Demon King orders him to give them chaos and find that kid. Now the power that kept the portal disappeared, and all of the entrances have closed. However, they would forever remember the cold fire that never died out. Naro was organizing all of his grandma's possessions. He finds an old image of him and her, and says no matter where she came from, no matter what her identity was, she would always be his grandma. At the school, it was yesterday that he beat that bully. The news about him beating Gensanken had spread. He was hoping there wouldn't be any strange rumors about him. When he enters the class, all eyes were on him, looking at him. Noro starts getting nervous, then a girl greets him. He was surprised because they never talked to him, because they were afraid of getting bullied. Everyone started to greet him and acknowledge him. Noro started to space out seeing all this. His friend Jin Yong comes from behind and snaps him out of it. Now that those bullies were not bothering them, everyone in the class seems more cheerful. Lee Luna comes there and asks Naro to meet her after school. Naro was about to say why should he. Yoon cuts him off and answers for him saying he would go for sure. Naro asks him why he was answering for him. He says he knew this would happen ever since that time at the cafeteria. Noro doesn't understand what he was saying. Jin Yong congratulates him on being a normie like him and the rest of them. Noro also decides to live a normal high school life for a while. In the back alley of the school, Gunsorn was beating all those students who were spreading the rumors about him being beaten up by Naro. They used to call Naro Dogro. He says a dog who bites should be put down, and they make a plan to beat him. They were forcing Jin Yong to bring Naro to them and were saying that they wanted to apologize to him for what they had done to him in the past. But Jin Yong knew what their plan was and denied to do what he wanted. Gunsorn starts beating him brutally for looking down at him. He even crushes his fingers, making him scream in pain. Gunsorn says that he brought this on himself and all of this was because of Naro. He was trying to intimidate Jin Yong, but he punches him with his trembling hand and calls him a stupid bully. Gunsorn was now enraged and started beating him more brutally. Noro was worried because Jin Yong is not the type of guy who skips class. It was lunchtime, and when Noro was getting out of the class, he meets Jin Yong. He was covered in bruises. Noro was shocked to see this. He takes him to the nurse's office. Jin Yong tries to assure Noro, saying he was all right and that he also punched the bully, so there wasn't anything to worry about. But Noro was angry at them and was going to beat them. But Jin Yong stops him. After school, Lee Luna comes to Noro. She was complaining because he didn't show up when she had asked him to. Noro tries to avoid her for now because he was going with those bullies. Luna was suspicious of them. Some strange men wearing strange coats were roaming the school ground. The bullies take him to a shady location, and as soon as he enters the room, a few guys attack him from behind, surprising Noro. The students were creeped out by those men. They were acting strange. Noro dodges that attack and hits the guy in the back. The other guy attacks him, but he counters the iron bat with his legs, and while they were distracted, he punches them. They start to panic and attack him together. Gunsorn was watching all his lackeys getting beaten up by Noro and was scared now. In a few minutes, Noro beats all of those guys. Noro calls Gunsorn to come to him in an angry voice. The bully sees a bottle, breaks it, and uses it as a weapon to threaten to kill Noro. Noro was also furious, but their fight was disrupted by some screams. All the students were screaming to save them. Under that cloak, those guys were monsters and they were now attacking the students without hiding their identities. The whole hallway was filled with them. Yoon Young, who was in the nurse's office, hears the scream and wakes up. He calls for the teacher, but no one was there. Then he senses something behind him. A monster surrounded by a dark aura comes there. Noro and the bully stop fighting and were shocked to see what was going on. Noro suspects that it might be those monsters who are after him. They had also come to the school. While he was distracted by all this, the bully attacks him, but Noro closes the door and locks him inside. The bully was yelling at him to let him out. Noro says if you don't want to die, don't come outside. But the bully was still furious when he notices a window. The teacher was angry at the students for causing a ruckus in the hallway. Then he sees a boy get sliced by one of the monsters in front of his eyes. The teacher froze with fear. The monster attacks the teacher as well, and now all the teachers were also scared. The students on the upper floor were still not believing it. Luna heard them talking and runs to the lower floor. While she was running, a monster comes in front of her suddenly and attacks her, but she reveals her secret weapon which she had with her all this time, and with that, she rips that monster into pieces. In the hallway, there were many students who were either unconscious or dead. A monster attacks a guy, and he asks his friends to save him, but they were too afraid to do that and they run away. As it was going to kill him, Noro distracts the monster towards him. The monster recognizes him and leaves that student to attack Noro. Noro was taking it somewhere without civilians. On the way, The bully attacks him again, but Naro dodges the attack. The monster catches the bully and slams his face on the wall. The monster says to Naro if he ran, it would kill the guy. The bully yells at Naro to help him, to which Naro replies, why should he? The bully was scared to death and didn't know what to say. He apologizes to Naro and says that he'd be his lackey for the rest of his life. He was desperately screaming for help but sees that Naro was gone. But Naro wasn't gone. Instead, he attacks the monster so fast that it wasn't able to defend itself. The bully sees the monster turning into ashes and asks Naro if he really was just a human. As he was going to answer that, a monster comes there flying. It was already beaten by someone else. Naro wonders who could it be and was shocked to see Luna fighting the monsters. Luna calls them stupid for just standing there. She knocks the bully out and they talk about the situation. Naro kept asking her about her identity, but she told him to lure these monsters to the gym. Naro was again shocked at how she knew that. Many monsters come there. Luna says him to move now. Naro jumps through the window and goes straight to the gym. He was wondering why those monsters weren't following him and thought that their plan failed. But as he sees above, they were coming up to him. He somehow defends himself against them and realizes that these monsters don't have a mind of their own. They are being controlled by someone else. And they were also much stronger than the monsters he had faced before. He was struggling to get them off him when Luna comes there, binds them in her wire-type weapon, and in a flash gets them off him. Naro asks her how she managed to defeat all those monsters in the school hallway. She told him to leave the chit-chat for later because more monsters were coming there. There were a lot of them coming through the window and soon the whole gym was filled with them. As the monsters were going to attack them, they start to merge together and turned into a huge monster. They were wondering how they were going to defeat that monster when Luna gets an idea. She distracts the monster toward herself and as the monster comes close to her, she pulls the curtain, blocking its eyesight. And now it was Naro's turn. He was hanging to the ceiling and used his brute force to break the iron ceiling and makes it fall on top of the monster. In the school hallway, that special demon was carrying Jingyong. He notices the ashes of that dying monster coming out from the gym and knew where they were. In the gym, after killing that big monster, they were planning to get out of there quickly. But then Naro hears Jingyong's voice. He was heavily injured and was barely standing. Naro was going to help him but Luna stops him saying there was something strange about his shadow. It was exceptionally big. But seeing Jingyong in pain, he goes to him anyway. When he asks him if he was okay, Jingyong told him to run away. We see a hand coming out of Jingyong's shadow and it stabs them both, not giving them any chance to fight back. It was that monster from earlier. They fall to the ground and Jingyong asks for Naro's forgiveness, and that's all he could speak. Naro was in extreme shock. The memories of what had happened to his grandma that day started to flood in his mind, of how those monsters killed her back then. He thinks about when he was a kid, how he used to celebrate his birthday with his grandma, and Kid Naro wishes to live with her forever. Seeing Naro get up after that lethal attack, both the monster and Luna were shocked. His eyes were rolled out and he wasn't able to see anything. He calls for his grandma in his dream and sees her dead on the table. When he tries to grab her hand, it turns into ashes. While turning to ash, his grandma told him to protect all the entrances. Naro was frustrated with not knowing who he really was, and in anger, blue flames start coming out of his body. His eyes start glowing. They were shocked and confused to see the blue fire. The monster was certain that he was unconscious and was overwhelmed by his strength, which wasn't like that a moment ago. As he approaches to kill the monster, the whole gym starts to burn in blue flames, and soon the whole gym was engulfed in cold fire. The monster was terrified and says it was impossible. Naro freezes the monster using his cold breath and shatters his whole body into pieces. Luna was just standing there, stunned, watching all this. Naro collapses with exhaustion. After being passed out from exhaustion, Naro wakes up in a bed, and his wounds were also patched up. Naro wonders where he was. He gets out of bed and starts wandering in the house. He notices whoever lives in this house was very mindful of their security as the windows were strongly boarded up. Even the doors were larger than usual. He gets inside a room and what he found shocked him. There were dozens of different kinds of weapons, from swords to modern guns. He was wondering why would a house have this kind of facility. As he was processing all this, he hears someone singing and gets his guard up and waits for that person to come. As the door opens, Naro swings his axe, only to find out the one he was about to attack was Luna, who was coming straight out of the bath, and they both scream in terror. Luna shows him the portal she was assigned to guard. She compliments his resilience as he was already up and running even though he had received fatal damage. Noro looks at her with suspicious eyes and wonders who she was. But before all that, he thanks her for saving his life. She teases him by mentioning how he was about to kill his savior. Seth asks him about Jinggyong. She already knew that he would ask that and assured him by saying he was alive and receiving treatment somewhere safe. Noro couldn't believe it and was so relieved that he started crying. Soon after that, he asks her about her identity with scary and suspicious eyes. The atmosphere there completely changed with just that one question. Luna tries to dodge the question, but Noro starts leaving her house, saying he couldn't live with someone he doesn't even know. Luna stops him from going to his place as it could be dangerous for him and says that he would have to knock her down first if he wanted to leave. So that's exactly what he does. He punches Luna, which she easily dodges. Due to this much movement, his wound to the chest opens. Luna grabs his hands and slams him to the ground, and says that he couldn't possibly be thinking of defeating her in his situation. Noro starts opening up to her and blames himself for everything that had happened in the past few months. The only family he had, his grandma died, he gained strength he didn't know about, and because of him even the kids at the school got hurt. As he continues to blame himself for everything, Luna told him that she would be his guardian from now on, and that she would protect him no matter what. Noro was a little confused about what she meant by a guardian when they smell something burning. It was the soybean paste stew she was cooking. It was completely burnt and she blames Seth for it. He asks if she had any leftover ingredients, and starts cooking himself, and makes some amazing dishes from whatever he had, and the one he learned cooking from was his grandma. Just thinking about her brings a smile to Noro's face. Luna asks him more about his grandma and what kind of person she was. The day after the incident, every student at the school was frustrated as no one believed their story, and the evidence related to the incident was being erased from the internet. And behind all this was an organization that was a secret from the rest of the world, except the governments. They noticed Noro at the incident area and deduced that he had some kind of power, and one of their agents was keeping an eye on him. On the other side, Luna and Noro were talking about his grandma. After some talking, Luna asks Noro if he wanted to know their identity. Noro was surprised that she also knew about those monsters all along. She was taking him someplace where he could learn about their identity and also the strength to fight those monsters. She takes him to a huge building, and this organization was the Great Defense Command Against Monsters, or in short, M1. She told him that this place was a shelter for power users like her, indicating there are more people like her in that building. Noro wonders how could this be a hidden organization with a building like that. Luna was briefing him about the organization and the get inside a lift when someone stops the lift. It was a girl who also seems one of the power users, and she also had the same school dress on as Noro. The situation was a little awkward, so Noro tries to make small talk with her and Luna started laughing. The girl coldly glares at him and then ignores him, and Luna just continues to laugh at Noro. They arrive at the 15th floor and Noro sees everyone there researching or training. They get inside and the training field was huge, lashed with modern technologies. The head of the organization was on the other side of the field and orders them to start. The girl, Leerin, comes forward, opens her case, and inside that was her weapon. She builds her weapon and points at Noro. Luna and Noro both were shocked at her action, and Noro could see that she wasn't messing around, she was dead serious. Erin blames Noro for letting his guard down and just shoots at him without any prior warning. Noro barely avoids the shot, and the head of the organization was analyzing his performance and grading him accordingly. He passes Noro in terms of speed. Irina gets annoyed and starts shooting continuously, but Noro was dodging all her shots and was coming straight to her. As she was going to attack him again, he kicks her gun and makes her miss the shot. The firepower of that gun was insane and the ceiling starts falling, so he had to back down. He hears something coming from the smoke. It was her next weapon, a chain connected to an axe, and she was also in tune with her weapon. He was worried if he gets closer, his demon form would emerge and worried that they would become his enemy. So he was just dodging all her attacks without attacking her, as he was worried that he would kill her. The head was impressed by his skills but was wondering why he wasn't attacking her. Erin attacks her again, and this time she had something up her sleeves. As Noro was in midair to avoid her attack, some hidden blade come out of the axe, and he falls straight to the ground in the process of dodging it. Luna comes in the way and stops Arin from attacking him. The test concludes and Arin leaves. The head compliments him but asks him if he was trying to hide his strength, to which he replies that he was just avoiding her attack or she would have gotten hurt. The captain told him how monsters were trying to get past the portal, and power users like them were the only obstacles in their way. He further told him that he would need proper training to fight those monsters. The captain was ready to provide him support but told him to prove his worth first. As he was leaving for a different matter, Noro asks him if all the monsters had to die, to which he replies that in past all the attempts to coexist with the monsters have been unsuccessful, and in a cold voice says that all of them needed to perish. After the test, Noro and Luna see Arena in the hallway and warns him not to get on her nerve as she was scary, to which Noro replies that she was the same, reminding her of the weapons she had in her house. They were talking when the doctors take someone to the emergency room in hurry, and Noro felt as if he knew that person. In the demon world, the demon General Chen was training, and his power was crazy scary. The demon King Kum also comes there and asks him if someone came back from the other side of the portal. Kum says to Chen that they didn't have much time left, and we see the land destroying and it was spreading fast. Noro goes to the same market where the old demon was. He asks him how could he use his powers without showing his demon self. There was no other way but to practice. To do that he must first train to control the energy inside him. Noro requests him to train him. The old man agrees and he told him to come every day after sundown. He comes back at midnight and when Luna asks him where he was, he just lies to her saying he wanted to take some air. The next day, he goes to that old man for his training, and he takes him to a secret location, which was underground and heavily secured. The old man wanted to see how strong he was and they start to fight. But all Noro was doing avoiding the attacks. The old man realizes that he wouldn't attack him unless he makes him angry. The old man corners him and asks him how Sona died. Even though there were many monsters who attacked her, she would have easily defeated them if it wasn't for him. She died protecting someone who doesn't even know how to fight. Noro was getting angrier and his marks start appearing. The old man blames him for her death saying she would have been alive if it wasn't for him being so weak. Noro couldn't hold himself any longer and the blue flames engulf the whole area. The old man couldn't believe what he was seeing. He recognizes it was cold breath, the mark of the eldest son, the former demon lord. He was baffled when he realizes whom Sona brought with her. The gap between the human world and the demon world. Monsters continuously yearned for the human world, but humans were always keeping them in check. If monsters can come through the portal, then there must be a way humans could also come to the demon world. Eventually, humans found that gap and entered the demon world, but humans were crushed and incapacitated upon arrival due to the fragility of their human bodies. The demon King Khan who desired serenity helped the surviving women, resulting in an unprecedented event to occur. The king and the mortal woman fell in love, and with their love, they created a new life form in that world, and the root of all this. A boy who was half human and half monster was born. The old man realizes that Noro was the son of the demon King Khan and the prince of the demon world. After the training, the old man helps him seal the overflowing power that was raging inside his body. He told Noro if he wanted to use his demon powers without showing his mark, he would have to make that power his first, and that if he manages to achieve that, he would have more power than he could imagine. He still doesn't tell him about his identity of being a prince of the demon world. During the next training session, the old man uses some kind of gas to make Noro see things that weren't real and made him face his fear. But they are not real but merely illusions in which his inner power is embodied. He told him to overcome them and leaves the area, and the gas starts spreading. Due to the smoke, his senses had become dull but he feels something familiar coming his way. A punch comes marching to him out of nowhere and he couldn't dodge the attack. The punch was so strong the whole ground started to shake. The thing had ridiculous strength, and it was made entirely of blue flames. That thing was the embodiment of his power. Now that the smoke had cleared, he could predict that thing's movement, and as he was going to attack it, another one of those come from his behind. Noro hadn't anticipated this and received the attack directly. Noro was frustrated at himself for being so weak and got angry, releasing his demon form. The shock from their fight was immense. The old man starts wondering how could there be something that caused the shock because it was just an illusion. He realizes if the inner force was too strong, he could kill himself. He tries to get inside, but the door was somehow locked from the inside. The old was terrified when he realizes that it could have the power to open and close entrances. The authority of the king, and this power was the reason the current demon king wanted him to use him as a key to unlock the portals. After some time, we see Noro brutally beaten up by his own powers, but he still hadn't given up, saying it was not over yet. The thing puts its hand on his head and he wakes up. The old man was already there sitting beside him and blames him for him losing control of his powers. Noro was angry at himself for failing in making those powers his own and promises to make it happen someday or die trying. In the demon world, the demon priest informs Kum of the land that got destroyed by the storm. And every day the land for the demons to live was getting destroyed. The other demons were wondering when they would open the portals, so they could leave this eroding world and live in the human world. It wouldn't be long before the whole land desolates. He orders him to call General Chen, who was near the portal, and he had also heard what the priest had told the demon king, and threatens to kill him the next time he does something like that. It has been 1 week since Noro started to go out at night without telling Luna anything. Luna asks him again where he goes and that their relationship shouldn't have any secrets. To which Noro asks what kind of relationship they had. She wasn't able to answer him, and now it was time for the next training session. And this time Noro was more determined to make the powers his own. As soon as the old man releases the smoke, a fist comes flying at him, which he dodges swiftly and attacks at an insane speed. The old man was terrified of his growth in just 1 week, but the one he was up against wasn't something to be taken lightly. This power was the inheritance of those who ruled at the top of the world. All 5 forms of power surround Noro. These powers were speed, strength, ice, barrier, and an undying flame. This time Noro goes into full demon mode from the start. Noro attacks the undying flame first as it was the strongest, but couldn't hit it as it was made of flames. The undying flame blasts him with its flames, and as he was in the mid-air, ice attacks him with the intention of killing him. But Noro somehow manages to block the attack and attacks the strength. The old man notices that he had started to dominate the power. The ice attacks him, which he blocks with a huge boulder and kicks it towards the ice. While it was distracted by the boulder, Noro attacked it, breaking the boulder, and he breaks its ground. The power starts to come to him as he destroyed it. Now he understands what the old man meant by making the power his own, and goes all out at the rest of them. With the power of ice, he freezes all of them and manages to defeat all of them in just one go. Now all of those powers were inside of him, and now he could control them at will, without showing his demon form. The old demon was proud of him for successfully making the power his own. At the M1 organization, the power users were ready for their morning training. The goal was to reach the 10th floor with minimum casualties and property damage. Luna and Arin were on the front, competing against each other. These two had acknowledged each other as rivals, and they were also the top students of the organization. While the captain was observing them, the doctor comes there and takes him with her. We see that Jingyong had survived somehow, and the weird part was, he was dead when they arrived at the gym, but they noticed some activity from him when they were cleaning up the place. And now he was sleeping just due to the effects of the drugs. The chairman expects to hear some good news when he wakes up. At night, Noro sneaks out of the house again, but Luna was watching him. At the training field, the old man notices that the aura around him had completely changed now that he had control over his powers. And to test if he was in control, he throws some magic rotors at him, which turn huge when they get to him. He dodges them, but they keep chasing him. So he decides to attack the source instead, and throws one of the rotors by the same trajectory it came from, and manages to stop the attacks. Noro wonders if it was over when the old man comes out of the smoke, and now he was in his demon form. And now to pass the next test, Noro had to knock him down in his demon form. He was from Musen demon race and the leader of the armament. Strong monsters like him all have special abilities like that. When Noro attacks him, his body just repels his punch. And now it was the old demon's turn. He attacks him with his palm, and that had such a destructive power in it that Noro almost lost consciousness. The old man didn't give him time to recover and attacks him again. Although Noro manages to avoid that attack, the old man told him that he wouldn't get harmed as long as he was in that form, and drags him to the wall. Noro grabs his hand so hard that it got bent with his sheer fist power. And now they fight to go all out, causing the whole underground to shake. This time Noro was going toe-to-toe against the old man, even overpowering him a few times. His attack and defense got stronger, and he was composed even in an all-out battle like this. He could also control his demonic powers and use them without showing his demon form. Noro blocks all his attacks head-on, and their battle made the whole underground cave crumble. Eventually manages to defeat the old man Fan Squire. The old man acknowledges his strength and says that he was ready now. The next morning, when Luna wakes up, she sees everything cleaned up and breakfast on the table. Noro was in good mood today. Noro told her that for some reason he had been tired these days, to which she replies that he was tired because he sneaked into the middle of the night for a walk. She told him to be considerate of the people who are worried about him. Noro asks him if she was worried about him. She starts denying it and starts flustering. Noro was a little emotional as he didn't think anyone would be worried about him after his grandma died. She starts feeling something toward Noro and gets annoyed at that too. On the way to the headquarters, Noro was wondering if Luna had seen his mark during the fight in the gym. But it turns out she hadn't. The headquarters thinks that the demons are hunting Noro because he was a power user, but Noro knows that it couldn't be that as he was not a power user but a demon instead. He remembers what the old man had told him about him being the next target of the monsters, and that they would keep coming until they find what they want. Noro still doesn't know that he was the key and that he was the one they wanted. He realizes something and told Luna that he needed to go somewhere. At the school, now students were not afraid of the bullies anymore, and when the bully tries to threaten them, they give cold stares to him, indicating they were no longer afraid of him. The atmosphere of the school had completely changed for the better, and even Noro wishes to live a normal school life like the others. After school, they go to his grandma's place. He was looking for that thing the monsters were looking for but had no idea where to find it or what it was. But of course, he couldn't find it and they go back to the headquarters. Luna saw his grandma's picture and she looked familiar to her. At the headquarters, Jin-young regains consciousness and panics. The first thing he asks as he gets up was about his friend Noro. After the doctor takes a blood sample from him, she told him about Noro and how he was alive and fine. Jin-young was relieved to hear that. At night, Jin-young gets up and wanders around the research lab. He was there to get his blood samples. He found the blood samples but gets caught by an agent girl. Her name was Sei and she was a power user just like Luna. She gets distracted by his handsome face and immediately starts helping him, instead of questioning him. While they were talking, a nurse catches them there and starts scolding them. She also finds the blood sample that he was hiding and orders them to leave. Jin-young asks her why he was classified as a biohazard. She dodges the question, and after C was gone, she was taking him to his bed as well. But suddenly, he grabs her from behind and closes the door while she tries to resist. And we see blood splattered on the door. After some time, Jin-young comes out of the lab wearing her coat which had blood on it, and her ID card, and menacingly smirks. At the M1 organization, the rumor of her in losing to a civilian was already had spread amongst the other students. But most of them don't believe it. A guy, Yu Hansen, goes to Arin to taunt her about losing to a newbie, but she just ignores him. As they were talking about Noro, Noro comes there with Luna. Everyone there was staring at him. Hanserog immediately wanted to fight him, and Sei gets attracted by him as well. Noro told the captain that he had no intention of working under them, but as their enemy was the same, they could cooperate. Hansen gets annoyed by his confidence and wanted to show him his place. He asked the supervisors if he could teach him some basics. They agreed to that and ordered them to treat it like a real thing, and told Noro to fight for real this time. At the lab, another doctor finds the nurse's dead body which was brutally butchered, and screams in terror. At the training area, Hansen asks him if he wasn't gonna use any weapons, to which Noro replies that a fist would suffice. Sei gets even more impressed by him and cheers for him. Hansen gets even more annoyed and compared Noro's attitude to Arin's, and thinks if he manages to defeat him, he would be the new ace of the organization. In the past, he had tried to defeat Arin many times for the position of the ace, but every time he gets beaten by her. Hansen's speed was impressive and Noro couldn't keep up with his speed with his eye. Hansen attacks him, but Noro somehow dodges the attack and punches him in the head. He defeats him with just one hit while closing his eyes. As his eyes couldn't keep up with Hansen's speed, he closes his eyes and uses his powers to sense him. Jin-young was watching all this while hiding. An employee comes there and asks him if he was the new guy, but he sees the blood on him and he also had the name tag of the previous victim. Jin-young smiles evilly at him and kills him on the spot. His body was surrounded by a black aura, the same as that demon at the gym had. After the match was over, they get an intruder alert. Noro wonders if the monster chased him all the way to the headquarters. The combatants get in a position to fight, while the non-combatants were to go to the safety room, including Noro as he was not officially an agent yet. C takes him to the safety room. On the way, Noro meets Jin-young and was surprised. Jin-young hugs him as soon as he sees him, and C takes them both to the safety room. The captain sees the CCTV footage of Jin-young murdering the doctors and orders everyone to find out about his location. They arrive at the safety room and C leaves. Noro asks him how he survived and thanks him for not dying, and says that he would protect him from now on. Jin-young says to him in a cold voice if he was capable enough to protect him, as he was the one who got him injured in the first place. Noro was in great shock hearing that coming out of his mouth. The chairman finds his location, but he was in the safety room, and once the safety was on, the outsider could no longer get inside, so they decided to just observe them for the moment. C notices that since she came back they had been silent, and then she notices the blood on his coat. He tries to convince her saying it got on his clothes when they were in the lab and the blood tube broke. He was trying to with his menacing smile on his face. Noro comes in the way and gets his hands off her, saying he was acting as if he was a completely different person now. Jin-young starts laughing loudly and Noro realizes that it wasn't Jin-young. The chief contacts C and told her that the intruder was in front of him. As she was talking, Jin-young attacks her. Noro saves her from his attack and asks him who was he, and he kept saying he was his friend Jin-young. C attacks him with the gauntlet, but he disappears into the shadows and attacks her. When asks him what he did with Jin-young, the monster tries to imitate Jin-young to mock him. She attacks him again, but he disappears and she hits Noro instead. The chairman tries to get inside the safe room by overriding C's command, but he was unsuccessful, as Noro had created a barrier like in the cave back then. The monster taunts them, but Noro stops C from doing anything reckless. Noro realizes that the monster was using shadows to move, the same as the monster who had taken Jin-young hostage at the school. He realizes that Jin-young was already dead at the gym and gets furious at the monster for using his body. Noro asks C to stick to the wall and breaks the light bulb so that there wouldn't be any shadows anymore for him to move. But in doing so, he had also lost and blocked his vision. But he uses the same senses that he had used before on Hansung and manages to locate his presence. The monster was mocking him for blocking his own sight, but a blue fist comes flying at him out of nowhere, which the monster couldn't dodge. The monster was shocked to see him using the blue flames without being in his demon form. Noro starts beating him brutally, causing him to cough blood. The monster tries to convince him that Jin-young was still somewhere inside him, but Noro gets angry at him and couldn't control his rage anymore. He releases his blue flames, making the monster wonder how he could get stronger in just a few days. The monster thinks of getting out of there and reporting the incident to General Chen. But Noro freezes him with his cold breath and shatters him into pieces. In the control room, all they could see was just the explosion of blue flames. Even though Noro defeated the monster, Noro was sad because of him. Jin-young couldn't rest in peace even after dying, and Jin-young turns into ashes. Just after that, the director manages to open the gate and they see ice around the room. Noro just went outside without saying anything as he had just lost a friend. After the incident, there was a board meeting. They were asking questions about how a monster managed to enter their facility. The doctor informs them that they had already suspected that he was possessed by a demon, but they still wanted to research him. The ability used to control a human is a high-level demon's walk. They were wondering why such a high-ranking demon would possess such a normal student. The director deduces that the monsters were targeting Noro, but he didn't know why. Noro was thinking about how he couldn't trust anyone now due to the recent incident. On his way, Irene confronts him. She asks him in a cold voice why he hesitated during the fight. He could have ended the fight quickly with his skills and said he wouldn't have gotten hurt. He told him that he was his friend, but Irene kept interrogating him. Luna stops Irene, but she was cold to her as well, saying he shouldn't be here if he was this weak-minded. Noro leaves without saying anything, and now he was even more frustrated. The doctor shows the director the CCTV footage of the fight. There were no explosives, but suddenly an explosion occurs out of nowhere. On top of that, instead of any flames, they found dice on the ground. They had never seen an elemental superhuman, let alone someone who uses cold fire. Noro had so many questions, so he goes to his demon master and asks him how he could stop all this, and what would they gain from killing him. The master realizes that it was about time that he knows who he really is. He bows before him. Noro didn't know what was going on. He told him that he was showing his respects to him as a soldier of Khan, to the son of Khan, the successor who possessed the authority of the kings. Noro was baffled to hear that. The master told him about the demon world. The land of demons became desolate after the war. Kum's soldiers had attacked the castle. Before Muzan, Khan's royal guard could come back with force, the battle had already been lost. The younger brother of King Khan, Kum, could not accept the king's decision to marry a human and have a child with her. So he used a cheap strategy to get to dethrone the king. The few remaining soldiers ran away through the portal and became refugees in the human world. Khan alone couldn't fight back the whole army and died fighting to his last breath by his own brother's hand. Among the fleeing soldiers, Sona was one of them, but she wasn't alone. She was with the successor of the demon king Khan. At first, Muzan thought he was just a normal demon child who didn't know how to suppress his powers. But when he saw the cold fire, he immediately knew who he was. The cold fire is a legendary strength among the demons, and it's the symbol of a successor. Kum was not the rightful successor, so there were many who threatened him throne. He wanted to kill the rightful successor of the throne and steal the key. That way, he could become the true demon king. Noro had the future of two races in his hand, and he needed to get stronger to save them. His mother sacrifices herself and made it look like she took the successor with her. Sona didn't tell him about all this because she knew what would happen if they were to find out that the key was Noro. The power to open and close the portal is a power passed on to the king through every generation. The key is a manifestation of that power, so his existence itself was key. Noro asks him why Kum wanted to steal the key, to which Muzan replies that he wanted to open the portal and invade the human world. If that happens, the racial war would begin, resulting in many casualties from both sides. Now that Noro had realized his identity and swore to protect the human world, the doors started to resonate with his power. The Demon King Kum also realized that the key had manifested its power. Now it would be even harder for them to open the portal as Noro would be consciously trying to close the portal. Kum asks for Chen, who was also observing another portal and was delighted that the Queen's son had finally woken up. Now we see Chen's side of the story. During the invasion, the Queen entrusted his son to Sona and stayed behind to distract them. Sona had a son and a daughter, and her son was none other than Chen. He was hiding with his sister in. Sona told him to go to a hideout that was in the forest and show them her necklace. Chen tries to ask her where she was going, but the soldiers were nearing them. While she was leaving, Chen asks her if she was holding the Queen's baby. She told him to take care of his sister and leaves, while Chen begs her to take them with her as well. He couldn't leave his sister behind to follow his mother and stays behind. He runs into the forest where his mother had told him to go. He arrives at the hideout and calls the people that were supposed to be there. But what his innocent eyes had to see at such a young age was terrifying. He screams for his mother while crying, hoping she would be there, but there his scream went unheard. In the present time, Chen gathers all his power and jumps inside the portal. The advisor demon reports that he couldn't find Chen and that he must have felt guilty and ran away. But Kum doesn't believe his words. He orders to gather a group of the strongest soldiers to manually stop the portal from closing. The advisor warns him that he could die doing this, but he orders him anyway. The advisor blames Chen for Kum's reckless actions. He was arrogant like this from the moment he first met him. During the Civil War, two homeless children arrived at the barracks. It was Chen and his sister in. He asked them to let him join Kum's army, but the soldiers kicked him and told him to scram. The advisor comes out after hearing all the commotion. Chen starts yelling to let him join the new king's army. The advisor sees how his eyes were filled with hatred and rage even though he has manifested his powers yet. The demon advisor told him that he needed to prove his loyalty to join the army, and in order to do that, he would have to throw away the most precious thing to him. Chen was dumbfounded and couldn't utter a word. They send him back to where he came from. The advisor thought it was enough to chase him away, but he came back with even more conviction. Inside the raft between the human and demon world, the raft was narrowing down, and if it wasn't worse, the vines grabbed Chen and were strong enough to break his bones. He tries to get those off of him, but they kept growing and binding him from all sides. But he was not going to be stopped by something like this, not after what he had sacrificed to come this far. That day, after getting chased by the soldiers, Chen gives the necklace that his mother gave him to her sister. She was happy to get the necklace. While she was distracted by it, Chen told her to wait there for him and leaves her there. Rin didn't know he was leaving her behind and cheerfully says that she was not scared and that she would be waiting for her. But she was left alone in that forest by her own brother. He abandoned his sister to join the Kum's army. He went to such a length to join Kum's army because there was something that he must do. He burns the vines with his fire. On the other hand, in order to protect the door, Noro needed an assistant. He comes back to Luna's house and sees a butterfly flying outside her house. She wasn't asleep. Noro asks her what she meant when she said that she would be his guardian, but she dodges the question and goes to sleep. The next day at the M1 facility, Sehi was completely healed and the doctor takes Noro with her to do some more tests on him. They present the test results to the director and the director asks her if she found something special about him. Noro was worried that they could identify the monster's blood inside him, but fortunately, the results were in his favor. Noro told Muzan that they needed M1's assistance to defeat Kum's soldiers. Muzan agrees with him and was also determined. He was going to gather those of Kon's soldiers who crossed the rift that day. They would rise again if they discover that Kon's son was alive and was gaining strength to fight back. Muzan takes an oath to make him the new Demon King. At an isolated place, Chen manages to cross the rift and was coming for Noro. In the demon world, the demon advisor goes to a village that was completely deserted. There was a rumor that the rebel army named Butterfly, which rebelled against Kum in the past, has regained its strength. And now they were regrouping. Chen meets with another monster who was here to look for the key, but he was being followed by a butterfly. Chen orders him to chase the suspect and to not kill them as they could be connected to the key. The demon chases after Luna. She knows that she was being followed and tries to lure him to an isolated place. Noro sees her and wonders where she was going when he feels the ominous aura from the guy who was following her. They arrive at an abandoned area, and she disappeared in front of him. An attack comes from him above, but the demon blocks it with his snake tails. She asks him why she was chasing him, to which he shows her the butterfly that she sent to spy on him. The demon was strong and fast. She couldn't outrun its tail and got caught. He calls him weak for someone who was a butterfly soldier. As he kept on throwing taunts, Luna starts turning to her demon form and manages to get out of his grasp. She turns into her full demon form. The guy was furious and turned into his final demon form, but he was surprised to see her using the red threads that Honor uses. She was supposed to be a low-level demon, but she exceeded his expectations. But his poison dissolved the threads and she was caught off guard. She was barely hanging on and the poison also started to spread into her body. Just then, she hears a familiar voice. It was Noro. He was beyond confused to see her in demon form, but they decide to talk about it later. First, he helps her in defeating the demon in front of them. Noro stomps on him so hard that he almost lost consciousness. Seeing he was outnumbered, he tries to escape through the ground. Luna tries to catch him, but the poison spreads into her whole body and she collapses on the ground. Noro also gets distracted and the snake demon manages to get away. After treating the wounds, they address the major elephant in the room. He asks her if she was a demon and if she knew about his identity as well. Ever since she saw him taking those pills, she knew he was a demon. Noro was angry at her for not telling him the truth earlier and pretending to not know anything. He didn't know how to trust her again. She assures him that she was on his side and asks him to believe in her just like his mother did. Noro was curious about what she knew about his mother. She told him how M1, who has been at war with demons for a long time now, sent a team through the portal to the demon world. But one of the agents named Ha Yen was captured. She later became Kon's wife. That agent was his mother. The queen was living proof that demons and humans could coexist peacefully. But there were also parties who treated her existence as a threat. After the birth of the child who inherited the blood of his both parents, several assassination attempts against the queen took place. The queen herself was a highly trained agent, so it was hard for them to kill her. However, The queen was always worried that stronger enemies might appear later on. So she secretly created an army, a military organization created to protect the peace between the prince and the demons. That's the butterfly group to which Sona and Luna belong. It all started to make sense now. She shows him the CCTV footage of the M1 facilities. They knew that M1 was not just a defensive force. They have hidden purposes. That's why Luna has been infiltrating their system and collective data. In the CCTV footage, the video was cut out in one place. They suspect there was a hidden door that has all their secrets stored in it. Noro proposes that they should go together. At first, Luna wonders how they would avoid all the security and open the door. Then she realizes that Noro had the power of the key. The snake demon reports the incident to Chen. Now that their existence had been released, he was planning to get to the key ahead of the scheduled time. The next day, at the M1 facility, Sehi asks Nero's help, saying a monster was chasing her. But it was one of the agents who was furious at Sehi's artwork on him. It was the first in a long time that we see a smile on Nero's face. After that, they get on with their plan to infiltrate the facility. They arrive at the location where the video was cut off and start searching for a hidden door. And soon, they manage to find the door. Noro opens the door using his abilities. Inside the secret room, there were a bunch of samples of different kinds of monsters. They were looking for the files on the old agents of the M1, especially his mom's file. On the other hand, Chen goes to Nero's apartment to look for something. They both find pictures of their mom, who passed away. They both were quite emotional to see the images. Just then, Noro senses someone coming into the room and they hide. It's the director of the facility. He takes a file and leaves after reading the files. They both were hiding inside the vent. As they were about to get down, Noro feels air coming from the other side of the vent. The director knew that someone entered the archive room, but didn't know who would dare to do that. After following the air, they get to a secret lab inside the archive. The doctor and Irene were also there. She was giving her some kind of drug and told her to report to her if she feels anything. They come back to their apartment and try to figure out what they were hiding. Luna reveals that Irene was always like this, pushing herself beyond needed over time. Noro suggests that they must be using her for something and hands her his phone to show her something. At Nero's apartment, Chen tears his picture with Sona and takes it with him. Just then, the security guard comes in and starts lashing out at him. Later, his body was found behind the building, broke in and destroyed. In the demon world, the monsters were trying their best to widen the gap, but they were failing every time and a lot of soldiers were dying in the process. Coom comes there and threatens the advisor to not let the gap close. The advisor told him that the butterflies were stealing their soldiers. Coom becomes furious and told him that he would kill him the next time he takes that name. At another place on the earth, two demons of the butterfly group were discussing about the rumors about the king's successor being alive. As they were talking, Chen comes there and asks them if they really believe such a groundless rumor. They didn't even try to put up a fight, because they could tell he was frighteningly strong just by a single glance. They disperse immediately, but Chen's flames reach the guy faster than he could escape. Chen told him who he was and the guy was in disbelief that Coom's right hand came this time. He knew there was no way he could outrun him, so there was only one thing he could do. He attacked Chen, but of course couldn't get to him. Chen starts to torture him and asks him where the king's successor was, but the guy denies it. As Chen was interrogating him, the demon girl attacks him from above, but she misses him too and he was now targeting her. She managed to somehow stay alive and escaped, but Chen follows her blood trail to another place. There was a huge hole found in the middle of the road. As the officer was clearing the area, he hears a noise coming from the hole. When he tries to look where the noise was coming from, a huge monster suddenly comes out of nowhere and chops his head off. The other officer alerts the authorities about the monster but couldn't escape himself. Many more monsters come out of the hole and start wreaking havoc inside the city. The M1 organization dispatches its agents to the scene. Noro wasn't ordered to go, but he still was ready to go. If the monsters are coming out in the daylight, in front of the people's eyes, then this must be something big. Luna tries to stop him but he didn't listen to her, saying it was his fight. Inside the city, the monsters were destroying everything they could find in their way. The agents arrive at the scene. The guy bets Irene to see whoever kills the most and they descend. On the other hand, Chen arrives at the market where Muzan was following the blood trail. On the battlefield, the speedster, Han Song easily kills one of the monsters in just a few seconds. While he was being proud of himself, the monster attacks him, only to get slashed in half by him. Sehi was also beating the hell out of them, and she was brutal for someone her age. But the monsters just keep coming out of the hole. There were 5 more in front of Irene. The director asks her if she could do it. She starts flying in the air, and a blue aura surrounds her body. She launches her attack and manages to get all 5 of them in just one shot. That's why she was considered number 1 in the facility. After she was done, she realizes that it must be a diversion to accomplish something greater. As she was leaving the battlefield after clearing the area, a huge monster that nobody has ever seen before comes out of the hole that terrifies everyone. The citizens get the disaster notice on their phones. Seeing all this chaos, Muzan realizes that someone was planning something big. Just then, he feels someone's presence inside his house. Inside, he finds Hannah, the girl who was running from Chen. She could barely talk, but still, she told him to run away and warns him about Chen's arrival. He didn't know why Chen was moving on his own. Muzan tries to heal her, but she knew that this was it for her. But before dying, she wanted to know if the rumors of the king's child being alive were true. Muzan fulfills her dying wish and admits that it was true, and that he was their true king, the eldest son of Khan. After that, Hannah peacefully passes away.